I thank you too for being here. It's a great crowd on a Saturday afternoon. I just am so pleased to see all of you here, celebrating the work of young people, young writers. The Chicago Literary Hall of Fame, as you may know, if you've looked at the website, seeks to honor the writers of the past, the great writers of the past in Chicago, celebrate those who have had a lifetime of great work and who are still with us, and as the third aspect, to nurture the next generation with contests like this that we hope encourages today's youth to develop into the excellent writers of the future. We all want to hear from these young writers as soon as possible. I have to do a couple of things, all right? But I will put aside something that, something that I spent a lot of time talking about when I was chair of a department at Columbia and working with the Story Week Festival. And that is, and I talked to students of many different ages about the value of creative writing in building one's voice, sharpening one's vision, and preparing for professions, a wide variety of professions. I'll forgo that diatribe against those who deny those things, okay? And who only want to see creative writing as a pleasant diversion from STEM subjects and the real world of jobs. I don't believe that that's what we're about. I'll only say that I've seen thousands of graduates at Columbia and similar schools who have gone on to incredibly successful careers in a wide variety of professions, and teaching, law, medicine, all sorts of things. So if anybody wants to hear my diatribe, I'll talk to you later, okay, over the food or something. I want today to point to one of the many things essential to becoming a writer and building capabilities useful in professions and keeping you at it, and that is pleasure, purposeful pleasure. The pleasure emerging from deeply immersing yourself in the creative process, in the work of imagination. When your imaginative focus is totally engaged and not just floating along on the social media surface of things, but seeing images and sensing movement that leads to story, that is a whole different ballgame for people. Our lives are made up of stories, and the more we engage in their potential for shedding light on our experiences, the more we can make sense of what otherwise in this world seems chaotic and crazy. So the more we give, and that's the more we give shape and meaning to our existence. That's what we're about as storytellers. Wright Morris, a great writer, a person who I fell in love with many years ago, who wrote many novels, was also an accomplished photographer. He was asked one time by Bob Cromie in an interview, Bob said, we hear these stories about writers who are crazy, depressed, drinkers, whatever. He says, what do you think about that? And Morris took a long time and thought about it. And he said, finally, I sit at my desk in front of my typewriter. This was back in the typewriter days. From 8 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock every day. He says, for 5 hours, I may be staring at the wall, I may be crumpling up drafts and throwing them in the wastebasket, all of that. But he says, I know that at some point in those 5 hours, I will have access to a kind of pleasure that anyone who doesn't write will never know. I hope, the writers in this room, and soon we'll hear from some of them with great pleasure, know what that experience feels like and know how unique it is. The powerful creative process can lead in its best moments to understanding stories from other people, other cultures, and to be promoting tolerance and integrity and respect. And from the Middle East, with its disastrous war, to our own country, with its pervasive book banning and discrimination and almost casual lying. We need to insist upon the power of story to understand and heal our world. To our young writers, I congratulate you. Not just the winners, but also all the honorable mentions and everybody who took the initiative to enter this contest, because you displayed bravery in putting your words on the page and putting your words out there. Whether you enter the contest, other contests, or seek publication or not, I encourage you to keep writing and keep going for that deep pleasure in all you do. I have to give a few thank yous, and you're going to have to pardon me, okay? I continue to be incredibly grateful for having my name attached to this contest by the board of the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame, a group of incredibly talented and dedicated individuals who believe in honoring the great tradition of Chicago writing from 200 years ago or so to the present day, to you all, the youthful writers of Chicago, who will go on to be the next generation of creative individuals bringing acclaim to this city. I am especially grateful to Barry Benson, who is here today, for conceiving this award and for finding a way to use it as an incentive to recognize and encourage young writers. The board president, Amy Danzer, and other board members like Michelle Morano, whom you'll meet soon, and to CLHOF founding executive director Don Evans, a truly visionary person and inspiring bundle of creative energy. I give a huge thank you to Carrie Mealy, leader of the associate board, who's attended to every aspect of the contest with meticulous care and her generous spirit. She is an angel and better organized than most angels. So, thanks to the readers of all the entries who selected the finalists: Barbara Eagle, Don Evans, Rebecca Hathaway, Adrian Hernandez, Anna Heslop, Eric Johnson, Anna Young, Barry Young, Elizabeth Martin, Donna Montgomery, Carrie Muley, and Bayo Ojikutu. The designers Rebecca Hathaway and Jeff Wagoner, the social media person Carrie Newer. Thanks to the judges of winners, two of Chicago's finest writers, Ruben Casada, who you'll meet in a minute, and Toya Wolf in fiction. Thanks to Jeff Helgeson and Donna Montgomery for hosting the open mic to follow these awards. I hope you'll all stay for that, and if anybody is needing to sign up, talk to these people, okay, or to us. Thanks to the photographer Don Seeley, the videographer Rana Siegel, and those who are helping out in so many ways with the event today. Thanks to my great friend Donna Seaman for being here as a supposed surprise. One which our angel over here blew. One of the greatest contributors to the literary life of Chicago. Thanks to our friends at the Public Library, Chicago Public Library, and to all of the people who made monetary contributions, large and small, in support of the awards fund. All of us at CLHOF appreciate that generosity. Most of all, thanks to all of you writers who shared work with us, and to the parents and teachers and friends who have supported the efforts of these young people. It means so much for writers young and old to have that support. Finally, a particular thanks to the moms. Happy Mother's Day. And now to present the winners in the prose and fiction categories, an extraordinary poet, editor, and educator, Ruben Casada.
When I was in high school many moons ago, I was going to major in physics, but my English teacher at the time suggested that we submit to a poetry contest being held by the Los Angeles Times. I grew up in Los Angeles, so I'm a Chicago transplant. But I entered the contest and I won, and it changed my life. I decided to become a poet and develop my interest in science through writing about science and exploring all other fields outside of poetry. And it's made its way in my writing. So it's a great life to be a poet and a writer. And thank you, parents, for being here to support your children. So I want to say that I'm going to announce each winner. Each will receive a check, an award, and a consultation from an editor from DePaul University's Blue Book, an anthology of best American high school writing. I did want to say a few words that were given to me by Toya Wolf, the prose judge. She says, "Please let them know, let you know that this is only the beginning. Your writing careers will be a lifelong journey. You'll win some awards and lose some too, but your stories are important and only you can tell them." I'll begin with fourth place, and each recipient will have come up and have some time to read their work. And then I will move on to the next recipient. And I'm going to begin with the prose winners.
Hey. All right, so this is my story. It's called Dog Eye. I stare into the mirror. A sharp, prominent jawline, Greek nose, and plump lips are reflected in the clear glass. My beachy waves are ruffled a bit and sprawl into my ice blue eyes. I would be an Adonis, but for the white blotch that drapes my left eye. It seems to bound toward me, leaping and sinking its teeth into me like a dog. It is a dog's eye, a dog eye. With 2 fingers, I massage it, rubbing faster, harder, trying to wash it away, wash it out, wash it down, so that the white stain will leave my skin and dribble down in a milky stream, back into the bottle from whence it came. Then I will screw on the lid and throw it away, to be forever forgotten in a dusty corner of some forbidden attic. Looking up, I shielded my eyes against the hazy light. The sun wavered and rippled like a puddle against the blue backdrop of the sky. Sweat began to drip into my eyes. I dragged my arm across my forehead and wiped the fluid onto my white sweatshirt. A brick shop started to come into focus, and I could see a sign swinging lopsided from only one of its bolts, wheezing back and forth in the wind. It read, "The Bubblegum Shop," in washed-out colors. Beneath the sign was a red and white striped awning which shaded the shop's display window. Behind it, a pyramid of pink and green bubblegum packs sagged in the sun. I remember when I used to see Miss Callister, the owner of the shop, standing behind that glass, arranging the gum packs just so. Her cat eye glasses reflected the sunlight as she detailed the shape to a T. Bent over, her nose would wrinkle at the sight of dust settling on her masterpiece, followed by her thin fingers running across the top to wipe it clean. The black curls piled on top of her head would bounce as she worked her way around the display, her eyes searching for any slight imperfection. So dialed in, the rest of the world around her was but a blur. Now, as I stepped up to that same glass front door which had the crooked open sign hanging from it, I pulled my hood up over my head. I crept over to find my regular buy, chocolate bubblegum. Most people think that's disgusting, but hey, for me, chocolate's chocolate, even if it's in the form of wax that's pooling in the sun. I placed my purchase on the counter. $14, she said. "Ma'am, I can't keep paying." I stopped short. Something was wrong with her voice. I looked up and met her eyes. Except they weren't her eyes. They were mine. and my birthmark was gone. You see, she melted away, and I am melting away. We are all of us individuals melting, 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 our faces dripping into pools of pure water. We are chiseling away at our own faces, molding and sculpting until nothing remains, until our dust blurs together into one murky stream of sameness, until we lose everything and become perfect. And yet, despite the loss, despite the pain, we grind.
Hi, this is On Innocence in Black Youth. The door burst open, rattling as it slammed against the side of the brick house. The house's owner stepped into the center of the doorway. His wife beater was soaked with sweat stains, and his sunburnt shoulders stuck out from underneath it. The overwhelming smell of cigarettes flooded my nose, and his thick fingers gripped his handgun. My friends and I stared down the barrel. His phone rang, and I looked at the rest of my friends' jaws dangling open. We ran. My cows felt like they would catch fire as I raced from his yard. We stumbled over leaves and tripped over branches as we bolted through the woods and back into town. My heart was a bass drum, thumping in my chest and through my ears. I couldn't hear anything over my own fear until the sirens sliced through the rhythm and wailed through the air. The police stopped us, and a second and third police cars arrived. The officers towered over us, and they questioned us with a cold expression, tough eyes. I squinted up at them through the bright August sunlight, trembling with fear. My friends and I stood shoulder to shoulder, but I'd never felt so alone. We were too young for them to run our IDs. We didn't have any. The officers took our names and parents' phone numbers. My sister drove me home, and the police called my parents to explain the situation. When my parents asked about the gun, the officer uttered coldly, he had a right to defend his property. He didn't know if those people were criminals or not. They're kids, my mother retorted. The officer sighed, but no words left his mouth. He echoed the man's fears, but sat silent for me. Fog clouded my brain, snatching away my ability to think. My mother hung up the phone with the officer, stood up from the couch, and walked into the kitchen. As she wrapped her arms around me, she whispered, "Girl, you're beautiful. Your skin, your hair, your nose, and your lips are perfect. Don't ever forget it." But at 12 years old, my hair, my nose, and my lips all spelled danger. My skin was weaponized to justify someone's weapon. In return, my reflection in the mirror changed. My innocence vanished. I learned that being black meant being hyper-aware of my existence. I stood in the center spotlight of a play I didn't audition for, and that truth suffocated me. This violence was tattooed on my mind. I laid in bed that night, curled up like a baby. I buried my face into the sheets as I muffled my sobs, aching to be anywhere else. My mother told my father I cried because the police had scared me. But I really cried because I didn't understand how the police couldn't protect me, how my skin wasn't mine anymore, or how anyone could survive in a world this cruel.
Hi, my name is Charlotte, and this is the first couple of pages from a longer story called Inviolable. So hopefully you might not get all the plot, but you'll get the vibes. I brought out a silver platter loaded with poached eggs, toast, glistening cherries, and sugar-coated pastries, much more than she was ever able to eat. Still, I made it for her, as always, with precision and care. We were alone here, the two of us, except for the endless cycle of housemaids living downstairs, none of whom stayed for long. Perhaps such acute isolation was not their dream, as it was mine. Mrs. Branson was waiting at the head of the lawn dining table, slumped so deeply into her ornate velvet chair that she was starting to slide out of view. With her hands in her lap, she looked wistfully, if not forlornly, out of the window. She wore a lawn purple dress with ruffles at the neckline and a thick layer of stage makeup. Her sharp cheekbones spun ruby red. She methodically put herself together this way every morning, despite the fact that she had not left the confines of her home or had any kind of visitor in almost a decade. The sun streamed into the marble-floored room at odd angles, the sky outside, overlooking vast gardens filled with manicured hedges and flowers threatening to wilt, had a silver haze that barely let the sun shine through. One particular sunbeam cast onto the bits of gray that were starting to grow into Mrs. Branson's dark brown hair. Some especially wiry ones stuck straight upwards, giving her an air of messiness. She jumped suddenly as I set the breakfast tray down in front of her. "And how are you doing after last night, ma'am?" I asked. Her smile quickly fell. She'd been having night terrors for months. I knew this because I was always the first person to rush to her side when she began her screaming. The night before was the worst I'd seen. She'd screamed as if she were trapped somewhere, unable to release herself, as she tried to rip her covers and scratch her arms. And when I shook her awake, she'd whispered unintelligible things. "I'm doing all right," she replied, "just tired." I nodded again, sympathetically, and began to look around. Some sort of vast sadness emanated from that room. The air was oppressive and stale. This despite its opulence, its shiny mahogany table, its gold wallpaper, its intricate mantelpiece standing tall behind the head of the table. "Lucy, dear, please read to me," she instructed. I grabbed a book from a large pile that lay on the end of the table and went to sit in the chair beside her. This was my morning routine. I got to do this, I suppose, because she saw something of herself in me. She often told me I was her favorite. Well, of course I was. All the housemaids thought she was a kook, perhaps even mad. They didn't understand her in the least. I opened a well-worn book, but I'd read no more than 5 pages when she began to stare out the window again. She shivered and for a moment would not blink. "Mrs. Branson?" I asked quietly. She looked at me, her face grave, her eyes almost pleading. "Lucy, I want to tell you this. When I have my nightmares or visions or whatever you'd like to call them, they always happen not while I'm asleep, but when I'm, I suppose, half asleep. I wake up because I hear these noises outside." I blinked at her. "What sort of noises, Mrs. Branson?" "I hear screams coming from my gardens." She pointed loosely toward the window at a large, spiral-shaped hedge. "And then I start having some sort of reaction to it. I don't know, I can't exactly control it. And they remind me how it is not safe outside this home, why I must stay in this house." I listened to her, my face attentive, empathetic. Perhaps she wasn't really hearing screams, but I understood. I, too, had once known what it's like to feel constantly at risk, unsafe. "Lucy, I trust you more than anyone," Mrs. Branson continued, her voice quiet and frightened. "And so, I must ask you, will you please go out there and find out what I'm hearing? If I were to know it isn't real, maybe I could go outside again." Thank you.
And our first place winner is Hazel Brown.
Hi, I'm Hazel Brown, and I will be reading from my story, Harboring. This story is about a young woman. She lives in an isolated cabin on a pond and has a romantic vision of spending her days writing. But several unplanned things begin to happen, forcing her to reconcile a set of new competing identities. This excerpt is taken from the middle of the story. Before we met, Franz had lived where our neighbors now live, just next door to my cottage. Well, I lived alone for those brief days. Maybe it was months. Couldn't have been a year, could it? Franz was all the while beside me, at his grandparents' cabin. I hadn't known any of them, or anyone else on the pond for that matter. It was a small pond, but sometimes I'd think, small pond, but houses, small houses, but bodies. Just bodies, but maybe more bodies someday. Maybe bodies now, across the pond, sleeping. So many dark windows I cannot see through. I first met Franz when the pond froze over. He had gone down with his grandparents to watch his young cousins skate across the ice. One little brunette girl and a boy, taller than I'd seen a young boy ever be. I watched out the front windows as Franz laced up their skates, and the grandma and grandpa sat themselves in red plastic chairs with mugs in their gloved hands. I remember smiling down at Franz and thinking, I may have children with that man someday. And by irrevocable chance, he peered up into my window with that face of his, the one he makes in prayer, kneeling up at some cross or another, or at dinner when he blesses the food that will be entering our bodies, and I appease with an ease while I really consult with myself. Am I the devil? Franz's grandmother passed away soon after we had married. We had already both moved our lives into my cottage, though somehow my life changed more than his did. We both remained on the same pond, myself even staying in the same bed. But I never lived with anyone like that before, slept with them, breathed with them, and ate my meals beside them, half praying. And so we were both trapped with each other, but for Franz, it seemed the divine design. I had only ever been trapped with myself. With Franz, perhaps I still am within myself. Perhaps it is that I have reverted into I with such verve, and I do not respect any spectator. A husband, a baby, all the babies that could ever be had. Soon after his grandmother's funeral, her ashes scattered along the waterside, Franz's grandfather moved away too. Far away, to Belgium, to Barbados, to Brazil, I couldn't say. But I knew that neither Franz nor I had many relatives to tell when we had the news. We were to have a baby. But who was there to tell that to? Cooing, our faces blushed and proud. Where did his little cousins go? That dark-haired girl and the giant boy? Why is nobody skating across the pond? It will be winter soon. I'm insulating a child.
I have judged for many, many national poetry contests, and the winners and finalists of this award are remarkable. You're giving the professional writers in the world competition.
So this is my poem, Nantucket. Smothered in January, all of the boats are leaving. By and large, they have better places to be. The whalers and fishermen are deserting the harbor and deserting their rods and harpoons up on the wharf as they voyage through the cold saltwater smog. The boathouses are empty, reeking with silence, under the weight of 20 years of snow, 20 years of January drowning out the right whales and driving the sailors and candle makers off the Cape, knowing there's better prospects than purgatory. Taking up residence in the empty houses up the hill and decorated with the stench of rotting spermaceti fish, the permafrost clutching the village has thrown all the men into their boats and pushed them out to sea. And I can see it's taken anchorage here. The horns across the water remind me of why I am staying. My compass is broken and I have no sense of direction. Too weak-willed to go rowing and too apprehensive to let the winds of winter cast me off. Like a whale in the flurry, skewered on harpoons pulling back, my thrashing to get away, slowing as the whalers circle in on me. A carcass turning over in a pool of blood and vomit, fated to succumb to the prospect of dying here, as they fasten me to their whale ship and drag me back to the unrelinquishing shore.
This would be better. Hi, my name is Morgan, and this is my poem, What They Won't Tell You in the Dictionary. Regret redefined. The flavor of nostalgia stuck to yellowed pages and yearning photos. It rests on your tongue like a waterfall, unruly yet unbridled by expectations. The honey in your mama's voice with a twang of dismay, and it's harsh. Hits you like the tea you left to brew yesterday, but not quite as icy. Solves its problems with loose lips, never fists. It lets its tongue run wild like a wildflower chased down by forest fires. Dances to the music in your bones. It'll let you know if there's no track playing. The sickness of unknowns. It rests on your mind like a monsoon, unyielding yet unwilling to let you down slowly. Sinks you like a stone finished skipping. Isn't it doomed to fill in your blanks? Thank you.
The Herring Net, Winslow Homer. My spine ached parallel to the sea surface, clashing to the sides of the sail wood. Welch's fingers in between the fish-filled net, in exhaustion as dusk rose. My hands slippery hanging off the rim, tilting the boat slightly left. With rain tingling on my hat, The waves transport us to our enemies. A bronze outlined chest floats past. Attention catching, I lost my grip. Blinded by the night storm fog, I leapt in faith. Treading, I soon obtained the chest. Teeth well ground, throwing the chest aboard, Welch couldn't bother to me, testifying my strength. The water fights back. Thank you.
So much, Ruben. Hello, everyone. Congratulations to all the winners, and honorable mention is winning too in my book. I'm so happy to be here. I want to thank the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame with such an amazing organization. I remember when Don first spoke about this, it's grown so tremendously from so many people's hard work. So cheers to all of you. Thank you, Carrie, for inviting me to say a few words about the man whose dedication to literature and students inspired these awards, my cherished friend, Randy Albers. I've never been an official student of Randy's, but he has taught me a lot about a whole lot of things during our many marathon conversations. We talk about reading, writing, people, places, politics, everything under the sun and the moon. I also learned a lot watching Randy in action during the gloriously enthralling Story Week Festival, an omnivorous gathering of writers, teachers, publishing professionals, and students. Randy magicked up this event each year for 2 decades with the help of spellbound faculty and friends, some of whom are here today. The conversations, readings, and parties during Story Week made the art of literature come fully alive. And that is due to Randy's great love of life. For all his depth and sensitivity, intellect and empathy, caring and attunement to pain and injustice, Randy knows how to have fun and how to cajole others into having a good time no matter what's going on. His love of music and dancing, of travel, good food and libations, art, theater, all are an infinite source of inspiration and delight. Randy embraces the contrariness and mysteries, absurdities and tragedies of human nature with tremendous generosity of spirit and a sharp sense of humor. He draws sustenance from the past in Rome and Florence, and on the page, reading William Blake, William Wordsworth, Wright Morris, and so many others. He also is in the here and now, lives fully and ardently in body, mind, and soul. Those of you who have participated in this award can be assured that you've embarked on a life that will sustain you, nourish, and challenge you. As Randy has proven to so many of us, a devotion to reading and writing gives shape, meaning, and direction to life. Literature is a sanctuary and a wellspring. Literature brings you into contact with people on the page and in the flesh who will light your way, remind you that you are not alone, offer transcendence and transformation and affirmation. With unbound enthusiasm, curiosity, conviction, and kindness, Randy is a sort of teacher and friend who discerns strengths you didn't know you had. Randy always goes all out for others, seeding, tending, and advocating for their creativity and their overall well-being. Well, I would like to turn the table a little bit. I would like to celebrate Randy's writing by reading a brief passage from the opening chapter in his magnificent novel, All the World Before Them. I hope you'll forgive me, Randy. Sorry about my weird allergy voice. Okay, this is from All the World Before Them. I couldn't resist, it's so beautiful. On the morning of his 53rd birthday, Adam Haskins sat perched high on the hill that ran like a hog's back along the southern length of his father's farm. Sitting on the grass, back against the tall rear tire of his Massey Ferguson tractor, sunburned arms draped across upraised knees, he scanned the sweep of earth extending from the base of the hill across Elysian fields towards his own farm, which lay stitched to his father's a half-mile distant by a straight fence line of barbed wire and cement posts. Beyond other farms, a green, wide snake of billowing treetops followed the river's meandering for 7 miles toward the robin eggs blue water tower and gleaming metal shaft of the grain elevator rising above the huddled houses of Harris, Minnesota. Rain had fallen nearly every day for the past 2 weeks. All of May had been wet, and now, already, the second week of June, water sat in shallow ponds here and there in the broad fields. The planting was not yet finished. The fully blossomed alfalfa lay in a tangle, and where there should have been green shoots of new corn in straight rows and undulating seas of new wheat, the glossy sheen on the open fields told anyone passing by on the narrow ribbon of blacktop to the west that even if the weather held, it would be days before farmers could venture out on tractors to finish work that should have been done weeks earlier. By then, Adam realized, with an odd sense of relief, he could be gone. Someone else could do the work and the worrying. Thank you, Randy, for all your wisdom, wit, warmth, encouragement, and joy.
Thank you so much to Randy, who is such a wonderful inspiration and a model for deep, committed engagement in teaching and mentoring writers. And thank all of you for being here. Once more, a big congratulations to our winners and our honorable mentions and everyone who.
Hi, my name is Lillian O'Callahan, and I will be reading a poem today titled Mississippi River Leeches. Mississippi River leeches were born at the bottom of the riverbed, with a body full of nothing and no one to turn to. Those damn Mississippi River leeches latch on for dear life, praying you never let them go, because in all honesty, they don't want to die alone. Thank you.
My name is Mila Ponce, and I'm going to be reading my poem called Waning Infancy. My mother takes my flaked hands in hers. They are calloused and depreciated from years of refusal to become a woman, and her tender fingers radiating heat poke dots into my skin to point out all of my waning infancy. She reminds me I know nothing except for how to fleet into barren, bone childishness. I squeeze her peony-colored fingertips, navigate the wrinkles in her palms, and search for wisdom. The scent of sweet, blushing grapefruit arils bursted, exceeding a tart fragrance on her fingerprints. Well, Mother, I never quite knew what these hands were for, and now I fear that I've misused them.
It's 1:26 p.m. I enter from the blistering cold, lugging my double basin stool while navigating a series of dark passageways. Rusted pipes line the close corridors, from which I sometimes hear water rushing overhead. Dust and cobwebs touch upon creaking valves, outdated perhaps, but defiantly playing their part after half a century's use. And the valves aren't the only performers. Muted music reverberates, escaping closed doors. Timbres clash, then merge. Footsteps echo overhead like drum beats as eager families rush to their seats above. I head through the door at the end of the corridor, and I'm jolted by an array of glaring fluorescent lights and a tidal wave of sound. The room is packed to the brim with performers, producing a deafening cacophony of musical warm-ups and indistinct chatter. I unpack my instrument and tune my strings, struggling to listen amid the noise. As I play through my orchestral excerpts, my bass adds an ominous rumble to the chaos of the room. Attention concert orchestra, if you are in concert orchestra, please line up at the double doors, a chaperone in the room shouts. Our conductor bursts through the door and motions for us to follow. We wind through the passages and enter the dark backstage crammed with screens, sound equipment, and now 50 fidgety young musicians. Our conductor opens the thick door, revealing a glittering wooden stage. He is a bassist, like me, and always whispers special encouragement to my section. Remember, bass is beautiful, the king of the instruments. You're going to do great. I find my place, occasionally looking around the modern concert hall, with its tall balcony and tight rows of orange seats. The bright stage lights and open space make me feel small. The conductor, beaming, steps onto the podium. In a moment, the music will emerge. A resonating warmth will envelop me as my bow traces across the strings. I will feel the adrenaline run through my veins, honing my mind to a precise point, eyes darting between my music and the conductor's baton. The music lifts me. Soon I will fly past emotions, past thoughts, past every other sorrow and worry in my life, into a place not bound by time or circumstance. The lights dim and the audience quiets to a hush. I feel as if I'm all alone and my stomach drops. Inhale, exhale, downbeat.
The Face Thief. Oh, dearest Creator, won't you hear my plea? Give me the gift of humanity. Of all the things eternal and true, humans possess the most prized object of all, the ability to create. You see, although I call myself an artist, I cannot create original ideas. Creation is a domain of humankind, a gift that has not, unfortunately, been bestowed to me. Instead, I find other avenues for creativity. Human faces, for example, are a huge inspiration. How much I love the human face, the way you can read their emotions from the flick of an eyelash, the contorted muscles of a scowl. I love their crooked teeth and their pimpled cheeks, their sullen eye bags, their burns and birthmarks. If I could kiss those perfect and precious faces, every single one of them, how I would in earnest. But I have no face of my own. I am nothing but an amorphous form, immortal and inevitable as the universe itself. How much I yearn to be human, for at least they have the potential to make something better of their lives. Finality hangs over them like a foreboding cloud, and yet they persist in defiance of imminent fate, as though death weren't an obstacle, but inspiration. Humans, such peculiar creatures, I want to be seen as one of them, but they reject me because they see only what they fear. To walk among them, I must take a face of their own. I sculpt myself into their shapes as meticulously as their creator did, working cell by cell, strand by strand, bone by bone, until my nothingness turns into something beautiful, something humanoid. At first, I thought that all it took to be human was to look like them. But I learned from experience that appearance alone is not enough. Humans hunt down what they don't understand with pitchforks, with torches, with stones. To be human, you must perform as though you were always human. So I can't only wear their faces, I must live their lives. Sometimes it works. I would trade immortality for the feeling humans call love. Alas, whatever love a human gives, it's not for the bearer, but for the face I bear. I can pretend to be the mask all that I desire, but in the end, they must be taken off sooner or later. They get itchy, you know, and rejection hurts more than immortality. Oh, dearest Creator, won't you hear my plea? Give me the gift of humanity, or must I take from what you never gave me? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maya, and my piece is called A Different Grave. Oh. One of my earliest childhood memories is of sitting on the bathroom floor watching my mother do her makeup. Whenever she got discounted Clinique bags, she'd gift her scraps to me, and it was my favorite time of month. I hoarded boxes upon boxes of the seafoam green lipstick tubes. The first shade I ever used was called A Different Grape. I was not impressed, instead always opting for black honey or angel red. 14 years later, I am digging through my mother's makeup box once again, desperately searching for the perfect dark shade after having thrown out all my expired lip products. And there she is, Grape, peering up at me, my only viable option. She's not my usual deep crimson and certainly nothing to call home about, but she'll have to do. My mother recognizes her immediately, complimenting her pink-violet glow. When I tell her I feel bad about calling off work, my mother asks me if I think a man has ever felt guilty for being sick. Grape answers on my behalf, never. Her tongue twists and curls around a palete de mango on the walk home, my fiery box-dye red hair contrasting her muted rose. When the greasiest man either of us has ever seen has something to say about my tits, Grape does not stay tight-lipped, does not bow her head and keep walking. We'll pass, she says. She marches down the street like she owns it, spewing streams of curses, and she looks good doing it. At work, she says, "Thank you," and "Of course," and the customers tip extra. I reapply her in the bathroom mirror, thinking of my mother all those years ago with the same mauve-blushed lips. The ones that informed her husband he could no longer live with her, told me never to take shit, and snapped her bubble gum loud enough to silence a stadium. We know Grape well. No crazy bitch in the way Eve and Pandora were mercilessly blamed by their gods. Know that if Grape took it upon herself to break your jaw, the blood would be so honey sweet that you'd ask her to do it again and again. Thank you.
Really impressed with all the work that was submitted, and of course the winners, the honorable mentions, were very high quality work. The reading, some of the skill up here on the stage and your performances were incredible. I know when I was in high school, I had a little idea about writing. It was nerve-wracking. There were some opportunities, but I wasn't sure, like that was, I wasn't sure if that was something that like was out in the open, like something that would be applauded. But there was a high school contest where I went to high school, and I, like you guys, I won a prize or an honorable mention. I can't remember which it was. After a few years, it doesn't matter. The point was, I felt like there was an audience, that somebody beside me cared about the work. And I think that's something that hopefully the Randy Albers Young Writers Award will do for not only this group this year, but groups going forward, is to let you know that there is an audience. There is there are benefits to writing and writing well and thinking and struggling to make the best work you can. Some of it is personal, and some of it is for us, including me and everybody out here today. So thank you to everybody that participated in this, and for all your good work, and for being here today. Thank you for everybody from the Hall of Fame, especially Carrie Muley, who was primarily responsible for orchestrating this whole thing today.